Hi guys, welcome to the lovely Blue Rooted Couch. We are so glad that you are joining us today. And today I have something actually super special because Izzy is not only a staff wife, but she is dual purpose, multi-purpose.
Something
she
like
has
that.
dual roles. She is also on staff. And I would imagine that the majority of you guys have not actually gotten to meet Izzy and Cam face to face because they moved in the day before quarantine started.
Yep.
Isn't that right? I mean,
day
the timing
before.
could not have been worse for y'all coming in. You're like, hello, Wichita Falls. Oh, let's go stay in my apartment for months. So, but I wanted Izzy to come because obviously, yes, she is a staff wife, but I'm so excited because as a women's director and as someone who's so passionate about connecting women to each other and to God's word, Izzy has that same passion and has that same zest for just connecting younger girls to each other, to God's word, to community, to truth. And she is a mad crafter, which is so fun to me. I mean, she just takes things and transforms them into beautiful things. So I just cannot tell you how glad I am that she's here on the Rooted Couch. So Izzy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
I'm so glad to be here.
And so we're just going to start off just talking about your background, where you grew up, kind of some things about your family.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of want to give people a snapshot of baby Izzy.
Yes. Oh, baby Izzy is a hoot. Well, this being in Wichita Falls is my first place to live outside of where I grew up. I was born in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm a true born Razorback. I went to the University of Arkansas, and I was born and raised in the Northwest Arkansas area, which is the best little corner of Arkansas.
It's beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
When you think of Arkansas, you think probably country, farmers, pigs, classic Razorbacks, but the Northwest Arkansas corner is amazing. But my parents actually, they were born in Mexico, they grew up in Mexico, and they moved to the States a couple years before I was born, and so they came to the States obviously looking for a better life.
Sure.
And so growing up in a Mexican-American household, I say Mexican-American because they adapted real well to the American culture. And just allowed us to immerse fully into the American culture, but still keeping our Mexican culture. And so that was always really fun to be able to enjoy the best of both worlds.
Yeah, kind of honoring both heritages. Yeah, that's awesome. So do you have sisters and brothers?
I have one brother, and he's 7 years younger than me.
Okay. Okay, and are you close or not close? So
Yes.
how old would that make him?
He's a senior in high school.
Okay.
So he's about to graduate. I guess he just did graduate.
Okay. Will he be going to school or what's his plan?
Yes, he is going to Missouri Western State, some random school in Missouri to play baseball.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Awesome. And I know you said that your parents, when they came here, they didn't have a whole lot.
No.
So, but they taught you some things that were just kind of invaluable. So kind of share with others just what were your takeaways from growing up in that family?
That was the cool thing about having just like that Mexican heritage is something that's very common in the Mexican culture is just working hard for everything that you have, everything that you eat. And so my parents came here with nothing and were married just down the street from where I went to college, which was really sweet. My dad got married in a teal t-shirt. My mom got married in a black and white polka dot dress.
Nice.
And from day one that they got here, they just went full force, just working hard, not just to get by. They were always more so just, they were dreamers. They still are dreamers. And they just worked hard to get the best out of life that they could. I remember growing up, my parents worked at the same, like an egg processing factory. And my mom, there was a lady at that plant that they worked at that after work hours every week she would come over to the house and she would teach my mom English. And they built this really sweet relationship. And so for years, I would just have Miss Debbie at our house teaching my mom English, and I just saw my mom's dedication of like, okay, I'm here. I'm not just going to get by with the basics. I'm going to learn. I'm going to dive deep into what my new life is here in this country. And so she learned English. My dad instantly picked up English just working there.
Right.
And so they just taught me the value of working hard and never settling for anything less than the best. And my parents were also new believers when I was really young. And so growing up, I got to watch them grow in their walk with the Lord, which was really cool because we were all just kind of being discipled at the same time, even though I didn't come to know Christ until when I was in college, but I got to watch them grow in their walk with the Lord and develop a love for people, a love for God's church, and just a love of giving and generosity. And so they really taught me the value of being generous. Having come from Mexico, there's not a whole lot there, and as a family, we weren't able to go back to Mexico to where they're from until just 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so for years, my mom would just like hoard like coloring pencils and like coloring boxes and all these school supplies whenever we'd go school supply shopping for me. She would just hoard them, and I'd be like, why are you buying so much extra? I don't need this much.
Right.
And she would always say, like, we're hoarding them, like we're keeping them so that whenever we go back to Mexico, we can take it back to the schools there and we can give it to the kids that don't have anything. My dad is a big baseball guy. And so he would like go to Goodwill and go to all these places, ask for like leftover bats and gloves so that he could take it back to the kids back in Mexico because they don't have the money to buy equipment like this. And so just seeing their generous hearts and
the vision that they had, because at that point they didn't have a plan to actually get there.
Exactly. We had no idea when we were going. It was just for years they were just, we're going to save up and we're going to keep all these things until we get to go, and we're going to give back to
just be a blessing to other people. That's so awesome. What a great place to, because I think, especially when people come from not a lot, people can tend to hoard and not live generously. So I think what a great lesson you've learned from your parents, just about living that open-handed life, open-handed life, and just being able to pour into others and be a blessing to others. Okay, so what's funny, we had a little bit of a connection with our church because in college, you and Sarah Claire Frank, if you guys know the Franks, they used to be, Hickson was on staff here, and now actually Sydney, her sister, is on staff here, but you were college roommates. So it's so funny that now you're serving in the church that her parents used to serve in. I mean, just fun full circle moments that we have here.
It was really sweet. I got to call her and be like, what is Wichita Falls like?
Give me the lowdown. That's awesome. I know. She's like, I was so hoping that she would come. So, but before you got here, obviously, you met Cam. So you were in school? Or had you already graduated?
I had already graduated. Okay. I was on staff at my previous church working with the college ministry for about 2 years, and Cam had moved to Fayetteville from Los Angeles, where he had been living for a couple
of years. Which, let me just say, if you see how Cam dresses, you are immediately going to pick him out and be
LA.
Like, not from Texas. Not from Texas. I mean, he has such a LA vibe about him. He really does.
Very cool guy. Very cool guy.
So and he totally owns his style.
Oh, he lives
for
it. Yeah.
I mean, he's like, this is me.
Yep. Yeah, he's very unique, one of a kind. You'll never meet anybody else like him. And so imagine that times 10. He was just fresh off the plane from LA, landed in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where everybody dresses like just basic people. We love the Gap, Old Navy. And he rolls in and everyone's just instantly just like obsessed with him.
I'm sure kind of drawn to him.
Yeah, drawn to him because he was so cool looking and different, and he was just so fun and outgoing. And when I first met him, everybody was obsessing over him, and I'm like, I have this weird angst about me where I don't like to fangirl over anybody or anything, and so
it's the reverse. You're like, I'm going to not pay attention to you
so
because I am not going to go to that level.
I was just like blowing him off, and very quickly after that, because he's such a friendly guy, we got connected just to hang out. And
was he working at the church too?
Yes, okay. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. He had moved to join the residency program at the church we were a part of called the School of Ministry. And so he was working with the student ministry there. And so as much as I tried to ignore him because I was too cool, I just couldn't help but notice how much he loved students and how fun he was around them, and just how much they gravitated towards him. Like just as much as normal adults would gravitate towards him, students were obsessed with him. He was such a fun and different kind of guy, and I think that at the time where we were in our church, that's just what kids were longing for. But also, the way he is and the way he was, he just changes the culture of a room. Like he'll come into a room here, and he'll change the feel of the room because he just exudes this joy. And so it was so hard for me not to fall for it.
Right. You're like, I'm not going to. Okay, I am.
Yeah.
I am. So then how did you actually get together? Because you guys actually came from the same church that Cody and Leslie were at, Cross Church.
Yes. And so it was such a crazy thing because we were both technically on staff together at the same church, the same campus. And so dating when you're on church staff is already weird enough because you're just in a fishbowl and everyone's just watching you. But dating and having worked together was just a whole different story, but God's faithfulness was all over it because we were just so determined to do it right and well. Not that we even knew what right looked like, but we were so determined to do it in such a way that no matter what the outcome was, whether we got married or whether we broke up, we were going to do it in a wholesome and holy way in which, you know, and I really dove deep into what does it look like to live above reproach? Because like you always hear that term and you kind of don't realize what it means. And the more I thought about it and the more God just kind of gave me clarity on it, was just like live in such a way so that no one can criticize you, so that no one can question you. So even if you break up well. If you date well. And so that was the thing that we just wanted to do. And so we brought a bunch of the pastors from our church, a bunch of people in our lives. We just brought them in and allowed them to have a voice in our lives so that we would be able to navigate through that well, because nobody knows how to date. You know, dating is weird. And so we just allowed them to kind of come in.
Just have that accountability and that voice and that, hey, you have permission to speak into this relationship. And if you see us veering off, we want to hear. Like, we want you to kind of bump us back to where we need to be.
Yeah.
That's so how long did y'all date for?
We dated for about 10 months until getting engaged. And we got engaged on the university campus because that was where, you know, that's where my ministry was, where my journey with the Lord began. And so it was really sweet.
That's awesome. And then you got married in January.
We got married in January.
And then accepted this position
in February.
And then moved in March to a pandemic. So fortunately, they've had zero stress in their marriage, you know.
I mean,
I guess the good thing is that you've gotten to like shelter in place together. You know, I mean, as newlyweds, you're like, oh, and now I'm with you 24/7, and I know no one else in this town, and I don't know anything about this town.
And me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we are so glad that you're here, and like Izzy said, I'm excited for you guys to get to meet Cam because he is just such a, like you said, I love when you said he walks in the room and he changes the culture, and it's not like, hey, look at me. He doesn't come in like, hey, I'm so cool. He comes in and people are drawn to him because he is so full of the joy of the Lord. Like if you're gonna see somebody that you go, that guy has Jesus all over him, it's Cam.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. So it's interesting because often I'll ask wives, you know, did you know that your husband was going to be called into ministry before you got married? But for you, because you have a call to ministry, just tell us how that worked. Obviously, you met both serving in a church. Did you expect that you guys would kind of take the next step? And do you anticipate, you know, serving in ministry your life together? Or what does that look like?
I wish I knew. Honestly, that's the thing that I wrestle with the most, because my biggest thing and Cam's biggest thing is always we just want to have our yes on the table. And already just in the last 2 years of being together, everything has kind of allowed us to experience both sides of it. And so when I was in college, my junior year, I felt the tug of a call to ministry, and I was really nervous about it because I was like, who, me? I had a business, I was working on my business degree, I wasn't really looking towards ministry, I had no idea what that looked like. I barely even knew what college looked like. I was the first one in my family to go to college.
So you're navigating all these brand new waters.
So I'm just trying to figure things out, and after I graduated college, the Lord made it very clear that my direction was vocational ministry. And so out of college, I just gave the Lord my yes. I was single at the time, hadn't even heard of Cam, and was single, and God was just like, just have your yes on the table, and I'm going to take care of it. And there was literally nothing on my resume, nothing of my experience, nothing that made sense that should have gotten me the job at that first church that I was in, but God, and He just made a way. And so having been there, I just fell in love with it. And I knew that I wanted to do ministry when I had finally surrendered to that call, because I just knew, like, God, I will never stop wanting to share your word and your truth with girls and women. So wherever I knew that, I'm going to do that. And that's going to be my
right.
ministry. And he just made a way for me to do that in a church, and that was super sweet. And then when Cam came along, he was obviously working in the church as well. But when we got engaged, he was getting ready to finish his residency with the School of Ministry and thinking about what his next steps were. He was interviewing with a couple churches, some of them that were out of state, and I was really nervous because I was like, we're going to get married, and I don't want to be long distance, and I don't want to move because I love Arkansas.
Right.
And we had to really evaluate, okay, both of us feel called to ministry, but what if both of us don't have jobs in a church? And for the longest time, I just remember just pleading to the Lord, God, just give us something that we can do together. And at the same time, that was such an impossible God dream. It was such an impossible dream that I had. But obviously looking now, he's done it. But before then, Cam and I both just had the same prayer. God, no matter what it is, we know that our call is to minister and to love others and to love you. Our yes is on the table for whatever you want to do. And for about a little less than a year, Cam actually worked in corporate. He worked for the J.B. Hunt offices, worked for another transportation company in the meantime, and just kind of gave his yes to the Lord of God. I know I'm called to marry Izzy. I know that she's called in this season to stay where she's at in her ministry at Cross Church, and so I'm just going to work in this secular business, corporate job.
Yeah.
And
until you open another door. Like, I'm just going to take the next step.
Yeah. And so that's kind of been our mentality looking at the future too. Like, God, our yes is on the table. So our yes was on the table whenever he offered a place for us to both practice our ministerial passions, but also our yes is going to continuously stay on the table. So if one day I'm called to just work in a corporate job and he gets to stay in ministry, or vice versa, our yes is on the table for the Lord. And so I have no idea what that looks like. We would love to continue being in ministry together, but I think that's the thing that I'm sure a lot of the other staff wives have said, that even if one of us is not in the actual church staff member position, we always minister together. We're a partnership, and so that's the sweetest ministry that we get to do it together.
Absolutely. And it reminds me a lot of Natalie and Tim Starry's story, because they both felt very called to ministry separately, and for a while served separately, both vocationally. But when you're moving somewhere else, a lot of times there's not jobs together. So now Natalie works, in a secular job, and Tim's here on staff part-time, and but it works. It's just different. You can't, and once again, I will put this on me, not for you, but I often want to grab the pen of the Lord and be like, I think this is the best story for me. So let me tell you how this is going to work.
Yeah.
But I have kind of that same background. I mean, I went to school and went to graduate school and got a CPA, and I was going to make a lot of money because I grew up in ministry family, and I was like, there's not a lot of money in ministry. So I'm going to do something totally different. And just the Lord in his sovereignty, just very much closing doors and opening doors, and closing and opening, and just being able to, I'm the same way. There's nothing on my resume that would have made me eligible or whatever for a position like I hold, except for God. And so I think that's also what can keep us humble, when we realize we have done nothing to deserve this. I mean, it's not like we have some great spiritual pedigree that's any different than anybody else's. It was just where the Lord has us right now. So, okay, so let's just talk about just like what makes Izzy so fun? Because I know you always say, she says she's basic. She's the most fun to be around. So, like, tell me, what are some of the things you love to do, like in your spare time?
Honestly, anything. The thing that allows me to have the most fun is being around fun people. The things that I do on my own to have fun is honestly anything creative. I am the best copycat. I will go to Hobby Lobby, I will go to TJ Maxx, and I'll say, I can make that myself. I'm not going to buy it. And so I will buy all the supplies to make what they already have made, and I just make it harder on me so that I can reproduce it.
Oh, I do the same thing. And then I spend way more money. I'm like, why did I just buy this stinking thing? Because now I have all the
awesome junk. But it's so fun to me.
The creation process. I think that's what it's like, the challenge of the creation.
Yeah, I would say, like, personality-wise, what makes me fun, honestly, not to over-spiritualize it, but it really is the Lord, because pre-coming to know Jesus, I was the most boring, lifeless, aimless person. I just was so insecure that I was like, I can't do anything because I don't want to draw any attention to myself. And having come to know the Lord, he just instilled in me a joy that I was like, I just want to enjoy my life. And if that means I'm going to do, like, bust my butt to do all these projects, then so be it. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't care if I take the bullet for something, if it means that other people enjoy it. I just want to create fun environments. And so I just think that's something that I missed out on for so long that now I'm like, I just want everything to be
full
happy
advantage of that.
and
Yes.
fun.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so it's funny because you said something about, you know, that you were kind of, you never wanted to ruffle any feathers. You kind of wanted to stay under the radar, make sure everyone liked you. So you kind of have a story about how you became Izzy. Because what is your actual legal name?
So my full name is Izzy Marie. In Spanish, it's Isa Mari. And so growing up, I was just like the shyest kid. I would do anything you say just to please you. And so growing up, my family always called me Isa as a nickname, which was just the first 3 letters of my name. And so that's what kids would call me at school because my parents would introduce myself. This is Izzy or Isa. And in the 5th grade, I moved to a different school. And I told my teacher, my name is Isa, and I'm like really shy. And she was like, okay, got it. And just as any other teacher would do, introduced the new kid to the class. And she said, class, this is Izzy. And in my head, I'm like, that's not my name. But I didn't want to say anything, and I didn't want to correct her. So I said, yep, I'm Izzy. And ever since the 5th grade, I kept it because I was like, well, I can't change it now. I'm in a new school. I might as well just embrace my new identity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, but I have to tell you, I told you this earlier, you embody Izzy to me. Like when I see that name, I'm like, this is what an Izzy would look like. You know, I don't really see you as an Isa.
Too. Yeah, I'm like, I got to uphold the name.
Yeah. Okay, so we always ask just fun random questions about cleanliness, first of all. First of all, would you say that you're a tidy or a not tidy person?
No.
I'm not either. I think it's the creative side of us.
It is.
Well, you know, you've been in my women's ministry closet. It was a disaster. I actually cleaned it out for Izzy's girls event so she could find things to use in there because it was such a nightmare. Lewis actually was like, it's time. Like, you have got to get this done. So yeah, I'm not a tidy person either.
No,
but we'll just chalk that up to creativity.
Yes,
you know,
it's
that
the
we just
creative
need
thing.
all the things around us so that we can create.
That's what makes it fun. I'm just like, we'll just dig around and we'll find it here.
Exactly.
My car is still packed to the top with all of our girls' event things, and it's been 4 days.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll
See,
deal with
that's
it
my problem
later.
too. Once I move on to another event, I'm like,
I'm over
I'm done with that. I'm moving on.
I hate the cleaning
The
part.
cleaning part is terrible.
I'm so good at making a mess.
Yes. I'm really good at starting something. It's the finishing it well.
Story of my life.
It's going to be a struggle. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so what about being on a deserted island? And I loved what you said about this because one, I just think it speaks to your marriage, and two, I think it speaks to your family. So let's say you were on a deserted island forever. Who would you be with?
Forever, I would have to say my husband, Cameron, because he's so fun and enjoyable to be with.
But if it was only a month?
If it was only a month, that changes things. If it's just a month, if I know I'm coming back to him, then, you know, I'll see him in a month. I can wait. But if I'm on a deserted island, keyword deserted, I don't do well being deserted. And I would have to take with me my dad because he just knows how to do things. I don't know how dads...
He would like build you a hut and stuff, I'm sure.
Dads just know things.
Yeah.
And so my dad, for sure, I would take him. He just makes me feel safe. And, you know, anytime I was ever in trouble or had a flat tire, like, he never taught me how to change my own tire. He taught me how to call him. And so I said, Dad, I have a flat tire. So now I'm like, Dad, I'm on a deserted island. You're coming with me.
Exactly. That's so awesome. Okay, and then what about, who would you have dinner with?
There's so many people. The one I landed on was I would love to have dinner with Joanna Gaines because I feel like we have a lot of similar things in our lives. For the first one is I have a very entrepreneurial spirit. I'm just like you. I'm such a starter and a terrible finisher. And Joanna has just built this Magnolia empire that I would love to just pick her brain on how she did it, you know, where she started, how she's getting here.
Right.
And it's just amazing. She's so creative and she's so cute and fun.
She is.
But also I would love to just like ask her about marriage because watching Fixer Upper Chip Gaines is a character, and I love him. He's part of the reason why they probably are so popular is because he's so funny and silly,
Right.
but he's a little much sometimes. And I feel like I can relate. Because
You might have a husband that might sometimes lean that way, right?
I do. Cameron, as much as I love him, which is why I love him, is because he's such a character and so fun and crazy and a little over the top sometimes. But I love Joanna and Chip's relationship because she just is just there. She's just chill, and she's patient
She kind of
with him.
diffuses the situation a little bit,
and it kind of makes
she
it
just kind
funny.
of goes, oh,
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, Cam.
Exactly. So, I'd probably ask her, like, how do you do it? How are you so patient?
And then can you be my best friend? Can you
Honestly,
decorate my house?
can we do everything together?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, as we wrap up, our last question is why this is called Rooted. And that is just what has rooted you through your entire life. Before you became a Christian, after you became a Christian, sometimes those things, it changes. Sometimes what roots us prior to Christ is going to be very different after Christ. But what would you say about what has been something that has rooted you?
Yeah. I would say before Christ that I see mirrored in my family, which was just Christ in them, was just consistency. Because in a world, in a life where everything changes, I went to 7 different schools growing up, but only moved once. And so that was just a lot of change for me.
A lot of upheaval.
Yes, especially for such a shy, insecure kid like me. And so my family's consistency before personally coming to know Christ just kind of helped ground me and keep me.
Kind of that security.
Yeah, it just made me feel safe and steady. And then post-Christ, I came to know Jesus my freshman year of college, which that was just the thing that just changed everything for me because it was my first time out of the house, living in a new place. Everything was just brand new and completely different for me. And so I saw that same, and I continue to see that same characteristic in Jesus, is just his consistency and his constant faithfulness in my life, and just seeing how true it is that he is a promise keeper. All the promises that he's made to hold me and to keep me and to sustain me and to provide for me have been so true, and I've seen it, and so that gives me such hope for the future of, okay, God, no matter where I go, no matter how bad things change, because change can kind of rock my boat a little bit, I can lay steady knowing that you've got me, you've been there, you're consistent. When everything else is changing, you're constant, and I can trust that. And so that just kind of keeps me going, and it just gives me a stable heart.
As I just think, especially for the people that are listening that have girls in women's ministry or girls ministry, what an incredible role model and what an incredible person speaking into their girl's life about the consistency of God. I don't have girls, but if I did, I sure would want somebody cool like you just coming in and be able to see them week to week and give them a call and give them a text and just say, hey, listen, God is faithful. In the highs, in the lows, in the good, in the bad, he is faithful. And I shared with you, I had the privilege of actually getting to come to Izzy's first girls gathering for the summer, and it was so awesome. She had one for middle school and one for high school. I mean, guys, I would encourage, if you have girls that are of the age of middle school and high school, get your girls involved in the girls ministry here. It is awesome, and Izzy does a great job making it cool and at the same time speaking God's truth and speaking God's word into these girls. And I walked away super encouraged. I also walked away a little discouraged because I was the oldest person by like 10 years there, but it's okay. I'll just embrace where God has me. I've become the older woman of Titus 2. So sad. Anyway,
We need you.
So Izzy, thank you for being here. It was so good that you were here. And guys, I just hope in the next months as we get to come back together and maybe things get to normalize a little bit more, that you'll have time to get to know Izzy and Cam, of course, but just for your girls to just connect with Izzy's heart, because I know you have heard today just how incredible it is. So guys, we will look forward to seeing you next time on the Rooted Couch.